Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to this week's episode of the Niche Case Variety Show podcast. We're from the Niche Case, theniche-case.com, otherwise known as the Niche Cache. If you're not from Aotearoa, where we just speak like, I don't know, the Aotearoa accent is quite, you know, and that's just that's just what we are. The Niche Case, fish, chips, and all that good shit. We love Aotearoa sport, and that's what we're here to discuss today on the Variety Show podcast. Touch on a few different bits and bobs, and you can always check out our big Aotearoa sporting yarns found on our website, theniche-case.com. Before this, we recorded a Patreon podcast for our Patreon whānau. Patreon is the best way to support the Niche Case directly. Patreon.com/EL Niche Case, L Niche Case. And we once again went deep into Blackcaps matters and an Aotearoa T20 cricket celebration. First of all, we think Aotearoa is the best sporting nation in the world, probably the best creative nation in the world, kg for kg as well. And with that as the backdrop, there are stats and hard concrete evidence to suggest that Aotearoa is the best T20 cricketing nation in the world as well. So big it up to Aotearoa, and big it up to all our members of the Patreon whānau. Hope you enjoyed that extra podcast, and Patreon is the best way to support us straight up the guts, as well as receiving that extra podcast every week as well. Every Monday and Friday we send out our email newsletter with all notes, nuggets, bits and pieces about Aotearoa sport and real Aotearoa sporting stuff you need to know, not all the fluff and bullkaka that you see elsewhere. We are only here to serve Aotearoa and Aotearoa sport. And we do that every Monday and Friday evening in the new email newsletter variety, thenichecase.substack.com. Sign up, and then you get those bonus yarns and extra content via that email dispatch, as well as all the links to our website and our latest deep dive yarns, as well as all the links to the podcast as well. So hopefully you can get off social media and just enjoy some Aotearoa sporting content sent directly to you like the postman. But we use ravens, and they pop up. They're interdimensional ravens. They pop up in the email inbox frequency, as well as going up to Winterfell to send a message that the Niche Case is in town. We always start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness wildcard. What do you got this week?
Yeah, other than the interdimensional ravens, I've got a quote that goes, "In all things of nature, there is something marvelous." Aristotle said that. Bit of ancient Greek wisdom there. And in all things of nature, there is something marvelous.
And I don't believe Aristotle ever came to Aotearoa.
You know what he would have found, though, if he did? Marvelousness.
The thing about Aotearoa is, like, there's just magic in how the seasons roll around. You get the full extent of every season. You get the birds chirping. You got the ocean wildlife. You got it's just beautiful. Aotearoa is beautiful, and there's magic and miraculousness in Aotearoa's nature as well.
Absolutely is. And I felt like I had to get a nature one because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they talked about gardens and how gardens are like this kind of like symbolic midway point between civilization and wilderness, because it's kind of like controlled wilderness. Like the plants are just, it like blew my mind when they were talking about it, because the plants in a garden are going to grow by themselves the way that any plants does, but it's not a forest, you know, it's a sort of contained area, but you still can't control it the way you can't control like the wilderness. But it's not concrete. It's not, you know, a building that's just always going to be that building. Like flowers are going to go through seasons, trees are going to grow and whatever like that. And it's kind of like this midway point between that. And then like they then took that further by talking about how like the stories will back that up too, because like if you like check your Bible or whatever, and where's the first evidence of like life on earth, and that like origin story is the Garden of Eden. You know, it's not like the Forest of Eden. It's not the City of Eden. It's the Garden of Eden, right?
This is a unintentional theme of the Variety Show podcast, but I was listening to George R. Martin describe his writing style, and he referred to himself as a gardener as opposed to an architect when it comes to writing. And that really hit home with me. Architects, they deal with plans and everything's measured and stuff like that. Gardeners are just always tinkering. You're just always out in the garden. You're doing a bit of this, doing a bit of that. And it's a meditative practice, and you always just got your fingers in the soil. So I resonated with that. I resonate with gardens, and I resonate with Aotearoa's magical glory. Don't have jungles, got a couple of forests, but most houses in Aotearoa have a garden as well, and I don't think that is a coincidence. Here we are, going deep into the Aotearoa spiritual mangroves. And before we crack into some Aotearoa Variety Show regular scheduled programming wildcard, I have to throw this up at the start of the show because it was just glorious. A couple of really funky situations in Aotearoa sport. Southland, I think they were playing Auckland in the NPC, and there was a fire alarm down in Invercargill. So that was quite funny, just seeing all the people leaving the stands. The game had to be stopped, and I think it was just some burnt pie or some shit like that. And then there was another quirky situation in the NBL final where the Otago coach had to tell off some kids for using an air horn, and it was just hilarious because it was like the camera pans over to see what's happening, a bit of a drama. There was an air horn blowing, and then you hear Brent Manahere, Otago Nuggets coach,
Matahari,
and he was like, you can't do that, you can't blow that. And I was like, yeah, those guys silly buggers, those guys silly buggers. And it doesn't matter obviously what cultural, racial background these kids were, but I use this as descriptive to help set the scene. Then the camera just cuts over to these kids, these little Asian kids, and they're scared as shit. They're like, what the fuck's going on? And the horns like beneath their seat tucked away. And I was like, I feel bad for these kids. And it was just a quirky situation where the coach is telling off the fans for using an air horn. And on the back of a fire alarm down in Invercargill, we've had such classics as a dog pooing on the field of a national football league game in Aotearoa. And I was just, do you have any updates to the quirky Aotearoa domestic sporting yarns from your viewership or your experiences?
Well, I mean, I'm hopeful once the Premiership, or the National League now it is, football season comes back around, because I don't think anything's ever going to beat that time that dog ran onto Medill's farm and pooed in the middle of an Eastern Suburbs game against Auckland City, I think it was, because I'm pretty sure Adam Mitchell was the dude who had to but the guy who had the foresight to go off and grab a plastic bag and, invert it, clean it up. Yeah, the visionary. I can remember a Southern United game where I think it might have been a women's game where they had like the gazebo set up for the what do you call it, like the subs and the coach and stuff, and it was just too windy and it blew away. And things like that. Like there's a lot of these little stories. I'm hopeful there'll be a few more, because that's the cool thing about domestic sports in Aotearoa is you sort of get like the crossover between grassroots and like the big time. Like it's the highest level we've got, but also you still have these like really endearing moments of just like complete amateurism. But if you want the good stories, you got to go to the grassroots stuff. Like I've got like, this is where it all stems from. I got plenty I could tell you about. Like just last weekend, I could tell you about how we had to start a football game with 9 men, lost 8-0 in the end, but we did get to 11 guys by halftime. The other team, by like their 6th and 7th goals, were doing backflips to celebrate. Probably lucky no one got decked in that case. It's the sort of thing that might have happened, but every week there's stories like that from the Northland Football League. So I could go on for days with that, but I probably shouldn't.
And I'm sure the listeners have some funky domestic,
everyone's got them,
grassroots sporting tales as well, and we're always open to hearing them. So however you're listening, spin a yarn about your glorious grassroots sporting tales. The funkier, the better. And just updating. We had 24 hours where some kids got told off for blowing an air horn in the NBL final, and there was a fire alarm in the Invercargill stadium down there for Southland Rugby. Let's crack into some regular programming here, Wildcard. we've already done 10 minutes. You're going to have to breeze through your yarns here. We are starting off with the hot take segment. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm sure Sean Marks has some grassroots stories, but he probably wishes he was back in those scenes these days. But a lot of if, buts, and maybes involved in what I'm about to say here. But I'm almost finished writing about some Sean Marks, Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant stuff, and trying to like make sense of it all. It has got me thinking because like ignore KD for a second. Kyrie Irving seems like he's relatively consoled now, at least for one more season. Like he's opted in. He's committed. Some level of healing has been done, as I'm sure he would say. Ben Simmons supposedly ready to play, or at least ready to try to play. Again, like it's buts and maybes, but if he does, his defensive prowess clearly a better fit for this team than James Harden's ball dominant offense. Joe Harris should be back from injury. Patty Mills is re-signed. They've added Royce O'Neal and TJ Warren in free agency. Still got Seth Curry. Still got Nick Claxton. So like, if somehow, some way, bit of that Sean Marks Kiwi grassroots magic or something, he can convince KD to buy back in, and kind of might just be the best, most balanced roster the Brooklyn Nets have actually had during the time that he's been there. Like this team could win a championship. It would actually be really good if everyone was like, fully all in. And as I say, a lot of uncontrollables, can't help injuries. Do have a lot of guys actually coming back from injuries as well. So not just the injuries that might happen. But maybe that's another reason why there hasn't been a Durant trade yet. It's that Sean Marks still feels like this version of the Brooklyn Nets hasn't really been able to put their best foot forward at any point, and that he doesn't really want to break it up so swiftly, so suddenly, without having at least one contending season. And they could be there if they do. I mean, the biggest reason to think that they're better is guys like Simmons and O'Neal, because they significantly affect their like defensive floor, raising that a whole lot. And as we know, defense wins championships. And if Sean Marks has been following his New Zealand NBL stuff, then he will know that, because the Otago Nuggets just flexed that rule to the full extent in the NBL. They weren't exactly expected to make it as far as they did, but they beat the Hawke's Bay Hawks. They beat the second seeded beat the Hawks in a play and beat the second seeded Nelson Giants in a semifinal, and then iced out the Auckland Tuatara in the final in Auckland, restricted them to 5 of 27 from deep, and in turn that's just messed up the Tuatara's famed interior offense. And that's how it goes, man. Defense wins championships. Case study number 10,374 or whatever we're up to now, the Otago Nuggets in 2022. Sean Marks seems to have realized that with some of his signings. Just not sure if he's going to convince KD to also realize that, but maybe pigs will fly one day. Who knows?
I was hearing, I did some research about how Woj, the slimy kind of NBA insider dude, he is like basically working in cahoots with Sean Marks. So everything Woj gets is from Sean Marks. And I think you're either ahead of Woj or just behind Woj for Sean Marks' ride or die, so mad respect to you. I'm not saying you're as slimy as Woj or anything like that. I'm just respecting your ride or die with Sean Marks. And if Woj wasn't such a slimy operator, he'd be welcome in Aotearoa for his defense and collaboration with Sean Marks as well. One more defensive, a team that's won multiple championships based around defense is the Melbourne Storm. And I came to realize that within the Storm and within Aotearoa Kiwis Rugby League, Kiwi NRL Rugby League, there is a middle forward trinity. Jesse Bromwich, Nelson Asofa-Solomona, and Brandon Smith. Each of them is the best at their little niche of middle forward rugby league antics. Jesse Bromwich, he's the best OG. He's the best OG middle forward in the NRL right now. Grappling guru, mana, kaumatua status, best OG forward in the middle in the NRL. Nelson Asofa-Solomona, the best massive dude. No one is as big or as mobile as Nelson Asofa-Solomona. And he is literally the best massive middle forward in the NRL. Brandon Smith, he's the best small middle forward in the NRL, and he literally kind of started the modern trend of small middle forwards in the NRL. Everyone else is doing it now because Brandon Smith is the best at it, and he offers the Melbourne Storm something different there. So Jesse Bromwich, best OG middle forward. Asofa-Solomona, best massive middle forward. Brandon Smith, best small middle forward. And they all started against the Penrith Panthers, and that's when I came to this realization that that is the middle forward trinity of rugby league right now. Statistical funk here, wildcard. Serve us up some vitamins.
Yeah, interesting on Bromwich, Smith, and Asofa-Solomona as well. They're all playing for the same team right now and have done for several years. All be playing for 3 different teams next year. But I got some Blackcaps vitamin stats here, and I believe you do too. But this Blackcaps have definitely earned this spotlight here. They lost the 2020 game to the West Indies yesterday. Don't know if you heard about it. It was a dead rubber. They had already clinched the series. First ever white ball series win in the Caribbean, 2020 or ODI. Might have a second one in a week if things go to plan in the ODI series as well. But you know, it's still relevant because that loss actually busts up quite a win streak. See, Test match has not been so flash for them lately. The World Test champs have even lost a few home games, which has been like the unassailable territory in recent times. Of their last 9 Test matches, all up, that's led to a record of 2 wins out of 9, 1 draw, and 6 losses. Not good, but in white ball cricket, it's different. Just had that European tour coming straight off a series sweep against England, and they won 11 straight. A series sweep in the Test series against England, then won 11 straight on the European tour of T20s and ODIs. 3-0 home ODI sweeps of Bangladesh and the Netherlands prior to that. Before that, you did have 3 T20s in India straight after the 2020 World Cup final when I think Mitchell Santner was captaining. It wasn't their full-strength team. Lost all 3, but that was the last time they'd lost a white ball game prior to this third game against the West Indies. So that actually broke a 17-game streak of white ball Blackcaps wins. Breaking it down further, since the start of the 2020-21 home season, the Blackcaps are 26-12 in T20s and 10-0 in ODIs. Their last ODI defeat against Australia, March 2020, right as the pandemic began, in a series that ended up getting abandoned, then got rescheduled, then got abandoned, then got rescheduled, and they're actually going to play it I think next month or something like that finally. But if you go even a little bit further back than that, since the 2018-19 summer, which does include the World Cup, the Blackcaps have had 22 wins, 1 tie. I think we know which game that was, and 4 defeats in ODIs in that span, which again, 26-12 in T20s going back that far, and then 22, 1 and 4 in ODIs. Only India has a better 2020 winning record in the span of time that I counted there. No team has a better ODI record. This is those, 10 wins in a row, although also no major team has played as few games as the Blackcaps in that time, which is a relevant point to all of this, what I'm saying. A lot of these matches were against so-called weaker opponents, and they haven't played a lot of matches at that. So best not to ignore that fact. But the Blackcaps been winning a lot of white ball cricket lately, and that's also a fact.
I am going to keep it simple and share some T20 batting rankings where Devon Conway the Machine, he has entered the T20 international highest batting averages in 3rd spot. Devon Conway has the 3rd highest T20 international batting average ever. He is also 7th for T20 batting averages. So Devon Conway's played 23 T20 international games and he's got the 3rd highest average. T20 cricket, he has played 125 games and he has the 7th highest average. He is 7th, and there are only 2 players from Test playing nations who are currently playing cricket ahead of him. So that kind of makes him 3rd highest T20 average of test playing nations and current players, both of which are phenomenal. So shout out Devon Conway, hearty Aotearoa joker. Deep in the Mangroves wildcard, what do you got?
Yeah, I've written Flying Kiwi season previews for Chris Wood and Libby Kakache in the last couple of weeks. Two of the big dogs of that kind of scene, who currently find themselves in pretty curious bench roles to start their season. Lots of wrinkles to go into that, and plenty of excitement still around both of them. But I wrote big old things on that. However, I also wanted to highlight a few other players who are just a little like, just drop his tier, who aren't going to get like the full article treatment, but still need a bit of a highlight on what tracking up as huge or crucial seasons for them. So the first one is Marko Stamenic, looking to break through at FC Copenhagen in Denmark. They are the reigning Danish champions. He has featured for them fairly prominently in the last couple of preseasons, but spent last season out on loan at HB Køge in the second division. Did really well there, though. He's come back and has actually seemingly nailed on at least a wider sort of squad spot with Copenhagen. He played 45 minutes off the bench in their first game, played 12 minutes off the bench in the next game, was an unused sub in their next game, and then wasn't in the squad for the one after that. So he's sort of been on a downward trajectory, pretty much because their captain, Zeka, who's a naturalized Greek citizen, but I think he's Brazilian originally, he's come back from injury. So Stamenic was getting some good opportunities while Zeka was out. Zeka's back now. Stamenic drops in the queue a little bit, but still hanging around with that first team as it stands. We'll see if he gets sent out on loan, but I suspect he probably won't. And if he hangs around, there's a good chance he could play some Champions League football before the season is over. Copenhagen have a qualifier coming up soon-ish, and they either win that and go into the Champions League group stages, in which case Stamenic could be the first guy since Chris Killen in 2008, New Zealand male to play Champions League proper, or if they lose, they just drop into the Europa League, and even then, that might be more of a chance for Stamenic to play if that happens. So big season for him. Also in Denmark, Daisy Cleverley. Did a 5 or 6 years, I think, at university in the USA. In the end, pandemic didn't help. She transferred at one point, did some postgrad as well. So highly studied player, but she had to wait until now for her professional debut, and she signed for HB Køge, the team that Marko Stamenic was on loan at last season. But with Cleverley, her version, the women's team Køge are not a second division team. They're the champions, two-time reigning champions of Denmark. So she made a professional debut off the bench in their first game of the season, then started the second game as they won 4-0. Sounds pretty good. They've also got Champions League qualifiers coming up soon, and it's big for Daisy Cleverley because she's a midfielder who will be a part of the World Cup squad for the Ferns next year. But a big season here, and she's got a chance to push herself into starters territory for that one. So that's huge for her as she turns professional. Chuck and Andre de Jong as well, because I'm really enjoying seeing him for Royal AM. He spent 3 years at Amazulu in South Africa, 3 stagnant years, spent mostly toiling behind the scenes. I think he played 1,500 minutes for the club over 3 seasons. It's really not a lot. Didn't score a goal at all for them. Looked all right, though, in the opportunities that he got. Like, he kind of felt like a guy who's doing heaps of training behind the scenes and just leveling up, waiting for that opportunity to show what he's been doing. Never got it, got released. Signed with Royal AM, another rival club in South Africa. Already scored 3 goals in his first 3 games for them. So that leveling up process, I think it's worked. And if he continues on this, I mean, there's some Jeremy Brocky at Supersport areas there. If he can continue this kind of trend, that's great to see from him, particularly after, he's really had to pay his dues there. Vic Esson at Rangers in Scotland. Another one which is very much with the World Cup in focus. She has been edging out Erin Naylor and potentially Anna Lead as well. Anna Lead's not been available for so many Football Ferns things lately, but Vic Esson's been excellent for the Ferns. She signed with Rangers. There is another battle there for I think her name is Jenna Fife, is a Scottish goalkeeper who's contending for that top spot there. They've alternated. Fife played the first game. Esson played the second game. They've got Champions League qualifiers coming up as well. So that's another potential feather in the cap as well. Big season for Vic Esson. And then, of course, let's chuck in some Marko Rojas as well, or Marko Rojas Wallen, as is going on the back of his jersey, playing for Colo Colo. They call themselves the Eternal Champions. It's one of their fan nicknames. So you get the point. They're a powerhouse club in Chile, and it's the ancestral homecoming for him. His father's homeland, and a rare instance of a South American-based flying Kiwis player. They're in a title race right now. I think they're about 9 points clear. They're looking good. He came on, first game, debut, had to wait about a month for it, building up his fitness, because, of course, he signed mid-season for these guys, off-season for him and Melbourne Victory, so he had to build up the fitness. Took about a month. Chuck him on in a game that's 0-0 against a team called Palestino. Who sets up the injury time winner? Marko Rojas does. So build on from there. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. The Chilean league is very different to some of the ones I've been following in the past. I'm really excited to lean into that one, because it's good fun and it's good variety. And if Marko Rojas does well there, that's going to be beautiful. So there you go. Marko Stamenic, Daisy Cleverley, Andre de Jong, Vic Esson, and Marko Rojas.
Deep in Mangroves, I am thinking a lot about like what is just the best way to view the Warriors moving forward, and just we deal a lot with Warriors expectations and the complete insanity of high expectations for the Warriors heading into especially recent seasons. For some reason, people expected the Warriors to make the top 8 under extreme adversity, which was never going to happen. And the same people who throw up these Warriors expectations then do massive think pieces about why the Warriors suck. And maybe if you didn't have this outlandish expectation, you wouldn't be measuring the Warriors against your outlandish expectation. So what's the best way to view the Warriors? And I think comparing them to the Bulldogs is a decent way to ponder the Warriors heading into next season. Obviously, both teams are not powerhouses right now. So that's a similarity. Both teams are also signing Penrith Panthers assistant coaches. Obviously, Cameron Ciraldo's joining the Bulldogs next season. The Warriors have signed Andrew Webster. Now, both of them are Panthers assistant coaches. One of them is apparently a coaching god who is going to help the Bulldogs to all sorts of championships and wins and whatever else. I'm curious, maybe the Warriors do better, and no one knows who Andrew Webster is really, but everyone knows who Cameron Ciraldo is. No one has any like excitement about Andrew Webster as a Warriors coach. Everyone's got excitement about Cameron Ciraldo as Bulldogs coach. Apparently, Webster does the Panthers attack in his assistant coach job. Cameron Ciraldo does a lot of the defensive mahi at the Panthers. I don't know, like Webster seems to also be working well with the Panthers, and he seems like a interesting option moving forward, let alone the Phil Gould situation. Phil Gould wanted to be part of the Warriors solution, and respect to Phil Gould for that. Everyone loves to moan about the Warriors. Not many people want to be part of the solution. Phil Gould wanted to be part of the solution until he wasn't. And then he left to go to the Bulldogs. So, fuck yeah. The Warriors will be better than the Bulldogs, and we'll see how that plays out. That's another interesting connection. Both have recently got a lot of their old boys involved. Stacey Jones, interim Warriors coach. You see Alan Gudenbiel in the coach's box. We've seen Kevin Campion pop up as well. Andrew Webster used to be an assistant coach of the Warriors. Now he's bringing Andrew McFadden, former coach, to come in some capacity as well. So there's a bit of old boys returning. Warriors identity, Warriors mana, the DNA. That's also going on at the Bulldogs. A couple of former players and some old school Bulldogs identities have returned to the club, and they're trying to get back to that dogs of war type of situation. So there's similarities there. And there's this, they share this myth about rugby league nurseries and catchment areas. The Bulldogs come from a very multicultural, diverse area of Sydney. They should be having all these junior players doing this and junior players doing that. Same way the Warriors, they're from Aotearoa. They should have the pick of all the Aotearoa talent. That's a myth. There are no catchment areas in the NRL. There are no local nurseries. Every NRL club goes to other nursery areas and takes the talent. Every NRL club has a scout in Aotearoa. And every NRL club is going to the Bulldogs competition to take a player there as well. And of course, both clubs, a lot of their players get better when they leave. Recent examples, Isaiah Papali'i. Bulldogs lost Morgan Harper, Remus Smith. So I think the best way to view the Warriors moving forward is to measure them directly against the Bulldogs and just see how that winds up. Everyone's hot on the Bulldogs moving forward, big signings, new coach. Warriors have got a new coach from the same Panthers club, and they've also got some new signings. So just view it through that lens moving forward, or at least as the season winds up, just ponder some of those similarities and who will be better next season. Question time here, Wildcard. I've got one question here. I want you to just rattle off the on the back of Marko Rojas playing for Colo-Colo, known in Chile as the Kiwi Messi. I'm going to rattle off some All Whites footballers, and I want you to tell me the first football legend name that comes to mind. Hard and fast, no thinking, just association here, okay?
Righto.
Chris Wood.
Alan Shearer. I was going to say Andy Carroll, but then I leveled up.
Libby Kakache.
Paolo Maldini.
Bill Tuiloma.
Christ. I don't know. The first thing that came to mind was Ryan Nelson, but I don't.
That's all right. That's right.
Yeah.
Sarpreet Singh.
Ooh, Sarpreet Singh is a JJ Okocha.
And Joe Bell.
Joe Bell is Gennaro Gattuso with a mix of Andrea Pirlo.
That is
I went high. I put a high bar on this.
That is awesome. A combination of Pirlo and Gattuso is the ultimate footballer. Like a rugged finesse passer is exactly what you want in football.
He's a pretty good player, Joe Bell. Say he's exactly what you want in many cases as well. He's a little more Gattuso than Pirlo as it stands, but I think that passing thing is only going to get better as he plays in higher leagues. I want to know from you, just dipping into your expertise. I think I know who one of these players will be, but what is the I've got absolutely no clue as what the second one will be. What's the Warriors halves pairing likely to be for next season?
I think you're going to see Sean Johnson and Luke Metcalf. But to elaborate, I'd say you need some more options. And because the Warriors started this year, I wrote this down. The Warriors had Cody Nikarima, Chanel Harris-Tavita, and Ash Taylor, right? And I think Dejan Arce, Luke Metcalf, and Ronald Volkman are better than those three halves. So I think that's interesting, but it also shows the variety and depth you need. Obviously, you got Dejan Arce behind me. I'd love to see Dejan Arce get a starting halves gig. And I think Sean Johnson, Dejan Arce would be fine. Unless Sean Johnson wants to give it up, I think the Warriors will start with Sean Johnson because the young players always need time to develop as well. My favorite option is Sean Johnson, Dejan Arce. They've signed Luke Metcalf, and I think they would have done that under the proviso that he'll probably get a starting spot somewhere as well. One more question to you before we get into Musical Jam quickly. Rattle off the 2 or 3 best young wahine footballers from Aotearoa right now. And folks can Google them or search on the niche case these names to get a deeper dive.
Yeah, well, it seems only appropriate that I do from the jar that is the under-20 World Cup that's going on right now. It seems like I should be picking someone from there. So I'll take that as the parameters and say 2 absolute standouts, Kate Taylor and Alyssa Wynnum. You know, Kate Taylor, just defender who does absolutely everything in a long line of New Zealand developing really strong defenders. Like, that's nothing new. She's just the latest in a great lineage there. Alyssa Wynnum is great because she's different in that she's a skillful, creative player who plays between the lines. And beats defenders one-on-one and things like that. And that is not a lineage that we have. Like there's just, especially in the women's game, there's just no one, there's no comparable like player that she's following after. She's unique. And that's why she's like, there's two different angles to why they're each such high caliber players, prospects. But that's why if I was to pick a third one from that squad, I really liked what Aniela Jensen's done in midfield so far. I think Millie Clegg's got great potential, maybe a little bit early for that. Ava Collins as well. Actually thought Murphy Sheaf's played fantastic in goal as well. I'd probably go with Marissa Vandermeer though, in terms of just like locked on prospects from there. So there you go.
Musical Jam got plenty of funky new hip hop around. We've got Danger Mouse and Black Thought. They've got a new album called Cheat Codes. Make sure you check that one out. JID, Jid, new track. Dance Now is an absolute banger. Classic music from JID, Young Jid. We've got Fable, South Auckland artist. He's got a new song, Close to Home, which is a South Auckland banger. And then you can't go wrong with The Alchemist. He's teaming up with Rock Marciano for a new project, The Elephant Man's Bones. So that's just some real funky new hip-hop. And, of course, a local artist, Fable, your musical jam wildcard.
Well, you had heaps there. I've hardly listened to anything in the last week except for the new OC's album. It's called A Fell Form, and I talked about it last week, so I don't need to really go into it, but just like OC's playing up the punk influence, loud, like crunchy guitars, good fun. I wouldn't say sing-along lyrics, I'd say more shout-along lyrics kind of thing. That album's great. Love the OCs, love everything that John Dwyer does. Just to get for a band that's been around as long as that one has, to continually both reinvent and also just be at such a high level every single time. Amazing. The other one I'd shout out is there is a new Marlon Williams single, and I'm getting sick of shouting out the singles. It's another, lovely song. Cool little visualizer spinning it back to the start of the podcast where it's a lot of like Aotearoa beach scenes and natural sort of glimpses and things like that. But I'm kind of, like I say, I'm sick of shouting out the singles because I just want to hear the album, man. Like, hopefully this is the last one. And I think the album comes out a couple of weeks or something. I don't know. But I am looking forward to that. And I've been looking forward to it for longer than I wanted to be looking forward to it. I'd like to just actually hear the thing now. It would be nice. Mr. Marlon Williams, if you happen to be listening, which I'm sure he is, speed that thing up, bro.
Also, another banger here that I just remembered, Loyal, L-O-Y-L-E, Kana. He's got a new song, Georgetown, produced by Madlib, and that is some super beautiful, soulful, funky hip-hop as well. So shout out Loyal Kana. That is the Niche Cage Variety Show. Big it up to yourself. Raise your mana. Don't worry about anyone else. Just raise your own mana. Multi order. Stay beautiful. And we'll be back with another Nichecast podcast on Thursday evening as well. Big it up. Stay beautiful. Kia kaha. Chitcher.